Everyone, welcome to the last day of Utah RemoteCon. We are so excited. We have some amazing panels for you today. First up, we have Lucy's Lord of the Rings panel. This panel is dedicated to Jake Stoddard, who is our moderator. We are so excited to have this panel be dedicated to her, and we'll have Jake talk about that in just a second here. We also have several other panels today. We have our call. Oh my gosh, Jake.
Yes, sir. I like how you're like going to force me to jump on here and explain myself.
I can't
easy.
In willingness.
Collin Star Wars panel, episode 2, Collin Strikes Back.
Why such a long title? Why even name it after me again?
So last year, when we were putting RemoteCon together, you had submitted a Rise of Skywalker panel, and we just thought it would be fun. And we actually submitted it to FanX this way as Collin's Rise of Skywalker panel, just to be funny. And so when we put it on the slate of panels for RemoteCon, we called it that, and we decided we had to have another Collin Star Wars panel. So that's
apparently it's just continuing here. We also have Battle of the Geeks 2, where someone may have the opportunity to dethrone Jake.
I hope so. Like, there's some tough competitors, and I think it'll be really fun.
How has it felt this last year being the king of the geeks?
Like before. I mean, it was more of an honorary title.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
I mean, I do have a crown now. So
does the new person get the crown? Are we passing the crown?
No, because the crown was a gift from a friend, so I'm not passing it off to anybody.
Back off. And then we do have our closing ceremonies. There is still time to donate and enter into our raffles. We are at $1,025. We are $475 away from our goal. So please make sure to donate. You can donate by going to givebutter.com/Utah RemoteCon 2. You can check our social media for the links. We'll also put it in a little scroll bar here in just a minute for you. What
are we raffling off this morning, Collin?
We've got Evermore tickets.
Sweet.
How cool is that?
I think that fits great with this panel, man. If you're into fantasy and whatever and role playing, like, Evermore is a great place to go and check out. I have yet to make it down there, but everything I've seen looks fantastic and amazing. So
yeah, I went once 2 years ago, and it was pretty sweet. Like, you can actually go and do quests, or you can just go and chill in like this cool village, and like they've got people just out performing random musical type scenes, or actual like fights and things like that. So it's pretty cool.
Well, if I were out there sitting on the fence about buying raffle tickets, that would put me over the edge. Like, go and buy some and
donate. Now.
So,
but let's bring in your panel here, and let's have you talk about why this was dedicated to Lucy.
All right, let's do it. Hey, everybody. So on the panel we have we'll start over that way. No, that way. With Anduin, Erika. She's so mad at me right now.
So, and the reason I put that there is because that's my gamer tag. That's what I'm known as, like, across social media. And it's because the Anduin is a mix of a couple different places from the Lord of the Rings map.
Yep.
And so that's why I wanted to put that there, because I was like, Lord of the Rings panel, I could show it off.
I put Jake for mine because that's my name. Yeah. So
technically, Anduin is my second name.
Yeah, and then we've got Craig.
So you actually changed it legally?
I would love to do that, actually, but my
really
parents would kill me.
Well, you're
you're waiting until they pass, and then you're going to do it?
Yeah.
All right, and then we've got Craig Price, our resident Tom Bombadil expert.
Yeah. If I was king of the forest. Yeah.
As a regal king of the forest.
Yeah. That's how I see Tom Bombadil as the most annoying lion you run into in the middle of the woods, singing off key.
We are gonna, and I'll talk about this in just a second. We're gonna stick mostly with the movies, and so we really won't talk about Tom Bombadil at all, except that he's not in the movies, and we can get into that if we want to, but we probably won't too much. James is also here, author and contributor now on Soul and Droids. Welcome, James.
Hiya.
And then we've got Collin, and you guys all know Collin.
Hello.
Don't overwhelm us, James, with the.
He's waiting. He's saving his best for later. Like you
No, you gotta get it out now because the best might not happen. So you gotta get it. Take your shots.
Yeah, that's right. So this is Lucy's Lord of the Rings panel. Let me explain a little bit about who Lucy is. Lucy is my daughter. She does have type 1 diabetes. And as we talked about putting together Utah Remote Con 2 and doing JDRF as our charity where we wanted to focus, I knew we had to do a Lord of the Rings panel because it's her favorite movie.
Such good taste.
As she does have good taste. I don't know, like... The first time she ever wanted to watch it, like I was watching it, she came down and she sat down and I had like 3 hours left in fellowship and she just sat and watched the whole thing and didn't like, and I mean, at that point she was probably 5 or 6 and it really kept her attention and she was really into it. And I think that was the year that she dressed as Galadriel for Halloween. Like she was very specific about who she wanted to dress as.
Nice.
And I thought it would be like Arwen, because that's like the main elf that you see in it. And she's like, no, I want the elf with the yellow hair who's really powerful and can be very scary. I'm like, okay, Galadriel it is. Here we go. So she, and her favorite character is Aragorn. And when I ask her why she loves Aragorn, she's not a teenage girl yet. She's only 9. So it's not like, because he's the cutest or the best looking. She's like, he's got a lot of skills, a lot of skills. And so, and it's true, like Aragorn does have a lot of skills. So
woman after my own heart.
That's awesome.
She wants a capable man.
That's right. And honestly, I'm excited for her to think that her husband, future mate, needs to live up to Aragorn standards because either she'll find someone who does or she just won't settle and that'll be fine, Like those are
Old
standards.
maid Lucy, that's great.
Well, okay. I don't want that either. I want her to find happiness, so it'll be fine. Yeah. But that's why we named this Lucy's Lord of the Rings panel. She won't be making an appearance or anything, but she is a big fan. And because we are going with JDRF, and she does have diabetes, when she was diagnosed and she spent a couple of days at home, she spent a lot of time watching Lord of the Rings to get through her new change in lifestyle. So this movie means a lot to her, and it means a lot to me, and it's something that we've bonded over. So I'm excited to get to talk about it. And let's talk about Lord of the Rings. Fellowship of the Ring came out 20 years ago this year, so it is also the 20th anniversary.
Yeah.
I can't believe that it's been 20 years that it's been out.
Right.
How did Fellowship of the Ring and Lord of the Rings, how did it change the way we look at fantasy movies? Because I feel like it really did in a lot of ways. I wanted to kind of get your guys' thoughts.
I have thoughts.
Okay.
So I've actually looked into this quite a lot because I love researching the background of this movie and the how-tos in the making. And there's one thing that stands up above everything else, and that is practical effects. Because when you go back and watch it, even the remastered version, there's not much that they had to remaster because the digital work also has held up, but most of it is practical effects. Like a lot of it, like especially when you go, you're meeting some of the orcs and you're going through that big tunnel. Mm-hmm. That's all practical. They just put a camera in this little miniature that they built and just it was insane how many things in that movie are practical effects. And that's why it stands out.
Yep.
I love that the first statement that we've made is already a dig at the Hobbit movies, like, because it's of the practical effects.
I will say what I did in one of the last panels, and it's because Peter Jackson didn't have as much control over these movies, over The Hobbit, as he did with Lord of the Rings, and that's why they're not as good.
Mm.
Well, I think that this is one of the first times that they put a lot of money and actually really thought it through and made it all at once. Now, that was Peter Jackson manipulating a lot of things behind the scenes. It wasn't planned that way. It was supposed to be 2 movies. And using the internet at the time, which was new. And you can hear more about this next month when we do Matinee Heroes does the entire month of Lord of the Rings, because Alan Cerny, my co-host, was part of the website, Ain't It Cool News.
Do you guys want to guess?
Nice.
Too late. We've already got it
figured out, Erika. Sorry.
It's already been recorded. But anyways, the whole point was he kind of forced the internet's hand and made the Weinstein brothers actually go for 3 movies, make it a big budget, made some casting choices by leaking things to the press early. Now, they didn't know how to handle the internet at the time, and they still kind of don't, but now they can kind of ignore more things than others. But they'd never had feedback before a movie was actually made. So to hear all these people, they didn't know, was this 3 really loud guys in a basement, or was this 300,000 people rising up in rebellion? So they took it very seriously and were able to change quite a things and make Peter Jackson, who had very little control, was able to get a lot more control just by scaring the producers with, look at the internet. They're crazy. They want this. They want Elijah Wood as the lead.
So smart.
Oh, yeah.
It's funny you mentioned the internet and the role that it played as far as the making of this movie, or making of these movies. I remember huddling around a computer at work. I worked at a bookstore at the time, and there were like 3 of us huddling around this computer for like the first images that they released from this movie. And this was like in 2000, and it was like the ring rates in the, like, riding their horses through the water or something like that. And like, that still sticks out to me. And that was really kind of probably the first time that I remember a movie being a really big deal on the internet before it came out, and people really wanting to see these images and everything. Now it's such a normal thing that it's like, oh, here's another round of Robert Pattinson as Batman and whatever. And it, every day there's something new being released on the internet. But back
And
then
that's
it really
planned a
felt
lot
like
of the
something
times
new.
too.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden we'll be like, oh, someone was just cast as the voice of something. And it's like, well, no, the movie's coming out in a month and a half. They're done. They were just kind of somehow they kept it secret, and now they're telling us.
Keep it secret. Keep it safe.
Yep.
And I think you're right too. This was really the first time that there was a really big budget put behind a movie like Lord of the Rings, because fantasy movies prior to this weren't necessarily these huge big budget features. And
They couldn't be.
right.
The special effects wasn't there.
Right. And the returns weren't there either at the box office usually.
Yeah.
So, but this was really the first time that there was a big, without Lord of the Rings and the success of Lord of the Rings, the movie trilogy, you don't get Game of Thrones down the road, and you don't get Amazon putting up a ton of money for both Wheel of Time and their new Lord of the Rings series, and being willing to do that. And I think this really kind of opened the door for that to happen, which, as a fantasy fan myself, that's probably my favorite genre to read. I love the idea that we can now make some of these movies and they won't suck, because prior to this, there was always the fear that they would.
Well,
honestly,
that's because they were like,
there's a handful
they were
that
stuck.
do.
Well, they were stuck having to be like, we fight some orcs, and then that was it. And you only see maybe 15 of them, where here you can see millions of them, hundreds of thousands, like they're supposed to be. You can actually see Mordor in the background looking realistic versus kind of a really bad matte painting. It just looked like it was real in something they couldn't have done, especially with the trick photography that they did. You just couldn't possibly do it up until 2000. Well, George Lucas, you can thank him.
Yeah. It was really cool. I was in
that's true. George Lucas,
London
a lot of credit.
when I was 15, I think. And while I was there, they had a Lord of the Rings exhibit where they had all of like the props and Boromir's wax body, and they had the cameras set up with a cart. And so me and my sister went up, we're like, obviously I'm the tall one, so I'm going to be where Gandalf is. And so we sat there and looked at ourselves, one of us being essentially Hobbit size and the other one being human Gandalf size, and then switching back and forth. And it was fascinating. It was mind blowing, and that made me love the tricks even more.
Yeah.
They even had an
Seeing it
exhibit
actually
like that.
happen.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
They even had an exhibit like that at FanX 2 years ago, at the last FanX. It was fascinating. I had a person I was with at the show who was like a good 1.5 feet shorter than I was, stand at one end, I stood at the other. And picture we took, she was giant and I was diminutive.
That's so cool. I love that.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So I think one of the big things that's made Lord of the Rings a success is the cast. So let's talk about how Peter Jackson look at the cast that he put together. I can tell you right now that the one thing that I would never, ever, ever, ever want to do is have to recast this movie in any way, Craig.
Oh, that's going to be hard to do since we're going to do a whole episode of it.
So weird.
No, we're doing we're going to be doing that on the last week of June, last Saturday in June. All of the movies that make us folks are not having a cast off. We are actually that's a regular part of our podcast. But instead of having to do it every week, we didn't want to have to recast Aragorn every week, so we're just doing it all at once. But yeah, we're gonna like third Hobbit on the left, that one that gives him the evil eye and the Fellowship of the Rings. That one we're gonna recast them all.
Yeah. but I love looking at this cast because in 2001, Ian McClellan was obviously an established actor. He's been around and doing things for a long time. Christopher Lee, who actually wanted the role of Gandalf and was very disappointed that he was Saruman at first because he's Christopher Lee and he's knew
met Tolkien.
Yeah, he knew this stuff inside and out.
He's also James Bond. His cousin is Ian Fleming and based it on him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yes. Christopher Lee is the most amazing person that's probably ever lived. And he's quite amazing. Well, he's the most person who ever lived. Yeah, he is still the most interesting person that ever lived. He's amazing.
Forget the Dos Equis guy. It's all about Christopher Lee for sure.
But you can't make him the good guy though.
No, and he was perfect as Saruman, but he wanted the part of Gandalf, and he knew a lot of the history and the backstory and everything of the series. Anyway, you've got so Ian McClellan was somewhat established. John Rhys Davies was pretty well established. Sean Astin had done some things.
Rudy.
He was in Rudy. And he was in, I thank you. I know he was in Rudy. Thank you, everyone.
Are you sure?
He was also in Goonies.
Never say die.
Yeah, but he hadn't done
Encino Man.
Yeah, Encino Man. Yeah, that's correct. Encino Man. And then Elijah Wood had been in a few things as more of a child actor, like he was in Huck Finn and some things.
What was that horror movie? He was the little boy.
Faculty.
No, that's not No, he was a little boy.
Yeah, there was one where he was a little boy. Yeah.
The Good Son. That's it. Yeah.
Oh, I don't think I saw that one. I don't like scary stuff.
But really, honestly, there wasn't this huge tentpole star actor that was going to draw everybody in with the Fellowship of the Ring. Yet when you watch it, who else could play these characters? I don't know. What are your thoughts on the casting of the Lord of the Rings movies?
Beautiful.
It was brilliantly done.
Because some of those friendships.
This is why Blake Lisman is not on the panel.
Because the friendships that have come out of that, especially with Merry and Pippin, and the Fellowship, they have been really good friends for a long time. So Dominic Monaghan and Billy Boyd started a podcast together. They frequently go and visit each other and have second breakfast. Their friendship has spanned so long that they are the epitome of friend goals and have inspired so many people to do so many things.
I remember when Billy Boyd came to FanX and in his panel.
Look out behind you. On the phone. He's got a knife. He's got a knife. Look out.
Look out.
Sorry.
You may be in danger.
I'm being attacked by Darth Vader, apparently.
Yeah.
Again.
It's a Sith. Like it'd be one thing if a Jedi jumped in, then there's like
Seriously.
something going on, but you're
No,
probably
because
okay.
the Jedi would have.
I don't even
probably
have a
killed Finn.
lightsaber to defend myself.
Yeah. And he's even dressed as Darth Vader. I feel like you brought this on yourself, Colin.
I gave it to him last night. I bought it for him like a couple weeks ago, and I've been waiting for like a late night where he's still awake for whatever reason. And so we went into the backyard and
I feel like you have a hobbit back there now. You got a little barefoot guy running around. So
all right, I'm gonna get him back to his mom really quick. I'll be right back.
I think the casting just worked out so well, and I don't know. I mean, how did Peter Jackson do this? Like, find these people and put them together? I mean, Viggo Mortensen, for example, like, what had he done before Fellowship of the Ring that he would have?
Oh, lots of stuff.
Well,
but he wasn't even the first pick.
He wasn't the first choice. He was the second.
It was Stuart Townsend, wasn't it?
Yeah, and Stuart Townsend.
So.
Stuart Townsend was actually on set. He filmed a couple things, and like 2 weeks in, they're like, "No, Scott, sorry, Stuart, you're just not. You're not Viggo enough.
Yeah,
you're not what we're looking for.
Yeah, we're looking for a man, and you are just kind of a guy who just kind of you're a dandy running through the woods. Hey, no, we got that. That's Legolas. We need a brute god, and we got Viggo.
Yeah,
only because his son told him he thought it was awesome that he take the job.
His son went to the premieres, and that was so cool. Dad, you gotta do this.
I think Philippa Boyens probably saw G.I. Jane and said, "This guy who's playing the Master Chief, get him, put him in as Aragorn." And Peter Jackson called Viggo and said, "So we're doing this thing called Lord of the Rings. I think you'll be brilliant in it."
He's doing the accent.
It's perfect.
Maybe, but at that point, Viggo put down the phone and said, "Well,
what's Lord of the Rings?
I don't know what Lord of the Rings is. Henry, do you know what Lord of the Rings is? Lord of the Rings? Are they offering you Aragorn? Yeah, they're offering me Aragorn. Take it. That was basically the conversation that happened.
Yeah.
That was great. Like, that was awesome. We'll just have James do all the parts from here on out. It was really well done. And he comes in and he jumps in like full force. I mean, he learns Elvish. He like bonds with his horse to the point that they're like best friends. I hear they still go out for coffee. And
his first day on the set was the battle on Weathertop. That was his first. He had to do the sword things the first day.
And he took his sword with him everywhere.
Yeah,
everywhere.
And he didn't want one of these mamby-pamby aluminum swords or what. No, he wanted the real deal, man. Like, I love with Viggo Mortensen.
I think Colin's trying to talk, but he's muted.
I think the cool thing about Viggo Mortensen is his legend grows like year after year. Like, eventually we're just all going to believe he is actually literally Aragorn.
Yeah.
Well, he's proven it as soon as he with Eastern Promises and all these other movies that he's done. He's just shown that he's such a great actor. And he was a great actor before this, because let's not forget, he had 20 years of acting before he was in this movie. It wasn't an overnight success, but this is where he got to shine. But ever since then, Viggo has been a leading man, and deservedly so. Yeah,
and even in movies that aren't even great, he's still really, really good. Like The Green Book. Like, he's just really good in that movie, even though the movie itself is questionable. Colin, what did you want to say while you were on mute?
Oh, I was just saying it's either the real sword or nothing at all.
But if I was Marley right now, I'd be pulling my sword off the wall and showing it off.
Well, we didn't invite Marley to be on this panel. So.
I that's what I'm in it. When FanX comes back in September, I will be coming home with Sting.
Now we mentioned Legolas. Yes, the singer.
She's gonna find a Sting cosplayer, and because it's got to be the tantric, so she's gonna.
No, she wants the real Sting or nothing.
Yeah,
you want one that glows?
No, Sting or nothing.
You can get one that glows.
Depends on the situation.
Well, I know, but you can buy one that glows.
I know.
Blue glow. Yeah.
I have yet to decide. I just know that's what I'm going to be doing.
All right, so she's
stimulus checks, hopefully.
Yeah.
Stimulus checks on things.
I'm just saving up for one.
Knows what she wants.
Yeah, I've looked at the swords before, and I feel like I don't know that I'm ready to jump into that kind of commitment for collecting and stuff, because the good ones are expensive, and I couldn't do a cheap one that doesn't look good. So
I would actually love to shout out Blake right now. because this right here is a signed poster of Gollum from Andy Serkis.
Oh,
wow.
It's got a prop ring and like the authentication stuff. He ended up snagging it for me for like 80% of what it's worth and was like, hey, do you want it? And I was like, what? And I almost fainted.
Is this Blake
That's
Lisbon that we're
awesome.
talking about? Because
Yes.
he's on timeout after his last comment on YouTube. So we shouldn't be shouting out to him at all.
But it is him. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is one of my prized possessions.
So if you guys had to pick a favorite moment or a favorite character, let's do a moment. Favorite moment from the movies. What's your favorite moment from Lord of the Rings?
Right. Where are we going?
Yeah.
That's my favorite because that's when it ends the first disc and you have to go in and you have to put in the second disc.
Yeah, on the
That's
old
one of my
DVD.
favorites. Yeah.
That's why you love that moment, is because that's when you have to switch discs.
I just love Pippin.
Yeah.
He's my absolute favorite. But there's a lot of moments that I love, but there's just something about that moment and the excitement of, oh yes, time to put in the second disc and watch more. The comedy and what it means is huge.
Well, and the whole conversation leading up to that, where he jumps in, he says, "You're going to need people of intelligence on this mission, quest, journey."
Thing.
That rules you out, Pen.
Yeah.
I love that so much. That's my
Yeah,
favorite.
I think Merry and Pippin definitely shine throughout the whole series, and it is their relationship that just kind of comes through on screen.
Oh yeah.
So, Colin?
Oh man. Samwise Gamgee, man. He is the spirit animal I wish I could be 100% of the time.
That's not what a spirit animal is, but that's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah.
It's fine. Just let it happen. It's early in the morning.
That was quite a rambling thought, but we'll let it slide.
No, I mean the fact that he never gives up on his friend, right? You know, up until the end where he's like, I may not be able to carry the ring, but I can carry you. You know, those just every single heartfelt moment that he's a part of, and keeping the rest of everyone together the whole time. I mean, he's the one consistent piece for Frodo, and the last source of happiness that he has as the ring's starting to become so overbearing.
Yeah.
I can't throw the ring into Mount Doom, but I can throw you.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Should have yeeted the seal door into the fire.
Did you say yeeted?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure. Okay.
There's
People.
There's a guy who does like some Lord of the Rings stuff on YouTube and TikTok, and he has merch.
Yes.
Yeah, that's Isildur in
I want that
Elvish.
shirt. I want that shirt so bad.
I'm so gonna get it.
Wow. Yeah, I love Sam's character, and you're right, Colin. He has a lot of great moments in the movie. I love when Frodo's trying to get away from the Fellowship and Sam's following him, and he's like, "Sam, I'm going to Mordor alone." "Of course you are, Mr. Frodo, and I'm coming with you." Like, it's not even like of course you're going alone. Like, but I mean, alone includes me, obviously. So, Craig, what about you? What's your favorite moment from the movies, as you've been able to revisit them a lot lately?
I really love how Gimli hates elves, thinks they're just despicable, useless people.
Pretty boys.
Yep, but absolutely falls in love with Galadriel.
Mm-hmm.
Because, of course, it's Cate Blanchett, so I can totally understand. But just to see him, it's like, I asked for a hair and she gave me 3. And you can see how he's just falling in love with this person who he thought he would absolutely hate. And how he kind of has a bromance with Legolas. They're having fun with each other. They're starting to become buddies, and it's going to be a buddy cop movie at the end with them too. So yeah. I really like that. Plus, I have a soft spot for John Rhys Davies as a Raiders of the Lost Ark fan. And when they're playing Sala, but he's also just a great, wonderful guy. I got a chance to talk to him a little bit at the FanX, and it was a dream come true. So anytime I could see him in there, despite the fact that the poor makeup almost scarred him for life.
Yeah.
He was in pain the entire time, and yet he's still this happy-go-lucky, except when he's in the mines of Moria. But other than that, he's always
tall.
Oh, he's like 6'3".
Yeah, he's 6'3". Yeah.
He's super tall, but he's the smallest guy, so it was really funny. But he's also just a sweetheart, and I like the little person that played him because there's you can see him running, and he's really giving it his all. I mean, he's not
so great.
He doesn't get to act and say lines, but that little person is giving it their all as an actor, and they're trying to be this valiant dwarf fighter, and I believed it every time I saw him.
Yeah. I sometimes I have social anxiety, so sometimes I don't always go to meet the actors. I just like to just see them because then I'm like, okay, they exist. And sometimes I get just too scared to talk to them. Anyways, I saw John Rhys Davies at FanX and I started crying.
He was. I was backstage when they were doing the cartoon voice thing that did the Twisted Tunes.
Uh-huh. And
I went back to see Chris because Chris Provost and I are buddies, and that's the only time I know that he's got like 2 hours of nothing to do really because the show goes on. And right. John Rhys was back there. He was sleeping a little bit, so I didn't want to bother him. But when he woke up, I was like, "Can I go talk to him?" Yeah, and such a sweet guy. I had a picture taken with him earlier, and like a couple years before, and he and John Cleese both stuck their fingers in my ear. So I have pictures of British Johns sticking fingers in my ear. I guess it's a British thing. I don't know. It's weird.
That's hilarious.
He's a sweetheart, and if you have a chance to ever see him in person, please. He's very open. He loves his fans. He wants to meet. He's there for a reason. He doesn't have to be there. I think people forget that. This is not a big, job for him. He is doing it because he genuinely likes to meet people because you don't get to when you're in movies.
If he comes back, I'll have the courage to talk to him this time.
Let me know. I will bring you up to him.
Oh, okay.
We're buddies now. So.
Okay, that sounds great.
I'll be happy
I'll just start nerd crying.
You can't. You gotta hold it together because
I'll take a Xanax.
Take some beta blockers or something. But no, you can't do that.
All right, James. What about you? What's your favorite moment from the movies?
If I had to pick one, it's when the forces of Rohan charge the fields of Pelennor. Oh. It gets me every freaking time. The soldiers cheering, the music, the fact that the horses, make that wonderful thunderous sound with their hooves. I mean, I love it so much. Everything about it, it gets me every time.
Yeah, it is a powerful moment, and it's one that, for whatever reason, people have decided to cling to compare to like the end game charge. Like I've seen this on like Facebook over and over again. Like, what's the best charge in movie history? And that's one that is always on the list and usually wins. And it is an incredible moment, and it is very powerful. I love that moment.
And you get Carl Urban screaming and eyes wide, looking like a complete psychopath. It's wonderful.
I love Carl Urban. Oh my gosh, he's great.
I think my favorite moment, if I had to pick one, and it's tough to pick a favorite moment because there are a lot of really, really good ones, but would also involve the Riders of Rohan, but it's at the end of Two Towers at the Battle of Helm's Deep when Gandalf shows up at the very last moment when it looks like all is lost, and he shows up, and he's got Carl Urban's character. Oh my gosh, Eomar.
It's early.
Yeah. There and all those riders, and they show up and they end up turning the battle. It's awesome and it's powerful. And to me, it kind of represents what Lord of the Rings represents to me in a lot of ways. We go through a lot of crap, and it can feel very dark, and it can be very depressing. But in that last moment, there's always that glimmer of hope. Anyway, I love that scene. Thinking of Gimli and Legolas together, I love the scene where Gimli says, "I never thought I would die fighting side by side with an elf." And Legolas says, "What about side by side with a friend?" That I could do. Like, it's just, I love their relationship. And Craig, when you brought it up, that was what I thought of, is just that moment where he's like, "Yep, I could die fighting next to a good friend."
Like when he shot the orc that Gimli was sitting on. He's like, he was twitching because I had my axe in his brain, in his nervous system.
Yeah.
It was
I love that
already
moment.
dead.
I love that moment because people are like, how would they know what a nervous system is? Listen, we don't know what their science and technology was like. Just leave it alone. It's a funny line.
Oh,
all right?
and they get so upset with meats on the menu, boys. And it's like, there's restaurants and they know about menus, and shut up. Just shut up.
It's like, come on.
Yeah.
Everybody has a restaurant, like the Green Dragon. Like, I'm sure they have a menu.
Urukai are sophisticated. Come on.
Yeah.
They speak common or basic or whatever the hell it is. So, come on.
Why not make any bed for 3 stinking days?
Okay.
Apparently, we're going to see James's one-man show of Lord of the Rings.
I'd watch that.
I will.
You're doing a great job.
I love it.
With
You're doing
Lord
a
of
great
the Rings
job.
being around for 20 years, that's why we're getting so much of the nitpicky, right? The fanboys have been around now. They've picked it all apart. Let's talk about the biggest nitpick that people have with Lord of the Rings and why they're stupid. Okay. The eagles. Flying them into Mordor. Let's talk about this for a minute. Have you guys, I mean, you've heard of this, right? Where they say, why didn't the eagles just fly them into Mordor? So let's answer that question. Why didn't the eagles just fly the Fellowship into Mordor to drop the ring into Mount Doom?
The same reason Captain Marvel didn't show up to the very end of Endgame, because there would be no story.
That's the very real answer, right? I mean,
they have other things to do. They're not taxi cabs of the skies.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're not there at every beck and call to do whatever. Besides, if they flew there, everybody would see these giant eagles flying in and attempt to shoot them down.
Well, even aside from attempting to shoot them down, they had ring wraiths.
Yeah, the wraiths would just...
The Nargul.
The Nargul that would fly up there and take the eagles out anyway. So it's not like there was no way they could have stopped the eagles.
Marley knows what's up. They are advanced species and don't get piggyback rides.
Well, that's not true. They do. We know they do at least once.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, but it's not like just whenever they want. Like, they're not at their beck and call, like we mentioned.
Right.
So.
They're not taxis. That's
Yeah,
but I think
when you gotta get cheap tickets for $49 each one way to Mount Doom.
And they only get piggyback rides to Gandalf. Everybody else, you get the claw.
That's true. The claw.
You're afraid of the claw. Sorry, liar, liar. Like, great moment from that movie. All right, So I just think that's always funny because it comes up, and I love that people think they're so smart. Well, that's the biggest plot hole in Lord of the Rings. No, it's not. It's not a plot hole. It's not anything like it. Writers write stories on purpose the way that they do, right? Like you said, Craig, Captain Marvel doesn't show up until the end of Endgame because it would be a much shorter movie, and they want to make it interesting.
Dead all the time.
Yeah.
This
That's why Superman's dead at the beginning of Justice
League. Here. Big book of plot hole number 1. Captain Marvel could have stopped Thanos at any time. Plot hole number 2, the Eagles and Mount Doom.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, can we talk about something positive real quick?
Yes.
Because we're running out of time, and you want to talk about some of the lasting impacts. Can we talk about Andy Serkis and motion capture?
Oh,
yeah, we have to talk about Andy Serkis.
I didn't want to run out of time because we're getting close, and I would hate to, because you could talk a whole panel just on Andy Serkis and his amazing gift of motion capture. He's not the only one that can do it, but he's the one that really pioneered it.
Yeah, for sure. And it was such an innovative way to do Golem. I mean, now we see it more and more often, but it's because of Lord of the Rings. And it may be one of the biggest impacts that it's had on movie making since the movie came out. I mean, this is how they do a ton of stuff. Marvel uses it all the time. Star Wars uses it now. Video games use it. I mean, that's their bread and butter now, and why video games have gotten so much better since 2001, or one of the reasons why. I mean, there's obviously a lot of reasons.
And he wasn't the first. I mean, we did have Jar Jar Binks and all that stuff. It's just this was the best at and the way they did it, because he was so good at it. He was so amazing that he deserved a nomination. And if they don't give him a special award at some point before he dies, I'm just going to burn down the Academy. Because, like I said, he didn't invent it, but he has taken it 3-4 levels higher than it ever was at the time. Right. And now he's like the Yoda of motion capture.
Well,
was the first. Oh, I'm sorry, Jake. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry, James.
He was the first actor to provide live motion capture on the set of a movie. They didn't have to go back and redo his acting job post. He did it live on the set.
I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, it was. And I'll make this last point, Jake, I promise. And then
no, you're fine.
He not only was his motion capture, terrific. He was a great. His acting was superb, and he provided a lot of the voice acting for a lot of the orcs and a lot of the goblins, and lots of other things in this movie. He was just a phenomenal actor.
Oh yeah.
Well, and I think him doing it live on set and them not having to go back and add a lot of that in is why you get so much of the genuine reactions and genuine acting between Frodo and Gollum and Sam and Gollum. And, a lot of the times when you've seen motion capture before, they're acting like you've seen pictures of behind the scenes where they're acting opposite like a tennis ball thing or whatever. Yeah. And this was them acting.
At best is Jar Jar Binks' head that he had.
Yeah,
he was just wearing a green suit and looking stupid.
And this was the first time that he was on. I mean, he was interacting with them in the way that would come up on screen. And I think that really adds to it. And it's interesting because we started talking about the practical effects and how that has been such a lasting impact from these movies. But this is one of the CGI effects that came out of this movie where Gollum looked real. I mean, you go back and you watch it and he looks so real. It's incredible and amazing. And at the time we hadn't seen it that good before. And I don't know that we're going to see it any better since. I mean, he's just incredible at what he does. Incredible at his craft for sure.
He's so great.
Absolutely.
My goodness.
So we can't not mention that. And Gollum is such an interesting character anyway. Smeagol, Gollum, these kind of two personalities that embody this creature. And is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? I mean, he's definitely rotten, but is he a victim and that's why he's rotten? Or is he just he's such a complex character. And I love the way that they explore that in the movies.
Well, he's a constant reminder of what the ring will do. Because you can say the ring's going to do this, you can say the ring's going to do that, and we saw a little bit of it with Bilbo, because he just seemed like he was more cranky. That one scene, I will say that's the worst CGI in the whole trilogy. Is when he
it's still
turns.
terrifying.
Well, it's because it's a jump cut, but it just looks ridiculous. But that's the only thing because Ian Holm is amazing. But
I gotta tell you that actually gave me nightmares for like a week, and I don't know why. It wasn't the orcs; it was just that one scene.
Because you see this sweet man all of a sudden, for a brief moment, turn into this absolute monster.
Yeah,
it's terrifying.
Yeah,
but I think Gollum was much more of a reminder of what could happen versus just like I said, a couple episodes with Bilbo where he didn't wither down and become this skeleton a couple 100 years old. Like he's like 500-600 years old, Gollum.
Yeah, he's really, really old because the ring stretched out his age and stretched him out and just goes. I mean, Gollum is a representation of the internal ugliness of that greed and that avarice that he has as far as the ring is concerned. And it's awesome. And Andy Serkis just does such an incredible job. I mean, to the point where if they were to ever bring Gollum back for any kind of movie, it would be hard not to have Andy Serkis involved. And somebody's going to do it someday, and maybe I'll eat my words, but I can't imagine
if they redo Lord of the Rings, I'm going to freak out.
I don't believe that. I think they're going to do what they're doing with Amazon. They're going to do a series.
Sure.
And they're going to build around it because, again, these movies are one of the few times when we have fantasy movies legitimized because the critics loved it. We've got nominations not just for acting but for Best Picture, and it won a slew when finally people realized, oh, I guess this wasn't fantasy garbage. This was real legitimate art. And so Return of the King swept and got like 12 Oscars because they realized, oh, we should have been giving them all along.
Yeah, it should have. All three of them should have. I mean, they were just fantastic movies, and it's true though. The fact that they were getting nominated was huge, but the win for Return of the King was a really big deal.
Yeah,
I mean, it really legitimized all of it.
So
But I don't know. I don't know that there's any plans. There's always the rumors. Oh, they're going to redo it. I just don't see it happening. The Tolkien estate. That's one thing that I will say. The Tolkien estate is very careful about how they let his work be used and how they license it out. That's why I have a lot of confidence in what we're going to see in Amazon, because they are very careful about giving those licenses out, even for a lot of money. They're very careful. And that's why we haven't seen, we've seen an animated version of Lord of the Rings, but we haven't seen a bunch of different versions of it. And we haven't had any real serious talks about redoing it because they're just very careful about it. I do want to put this comment up here because for me, this is what it's all about. Someone, Facebook user is saying, my kids are watching with me. This is a great discussion. For me, that's what Lord of the Rings is now 20 years later, I can sit down with my kids and we can watch these movies that meant a lot to me. And we can share that experience. They get to grow up with it. For them, Lord of the Rings is very similar to what the original Star Wars trilogy was for me. It was always just there, and we watched it over and over again, and it shaped who I was as a kid and into who I became as an adult. And I think for my kids, Lord of the Rings is that same thing. And I get to sit down and watch it with them, and it's awesome. And especially as we're talking about a panel that's called Lucy's Lord of the Rings panel, those moments, I mean, there's a Sunday afternoon every once in a while where she'll be like, hey, Dad, let's put on Lord of the Rings. Which one? I don't care. Just throw one on. And wherever we stopped last time we were watching it, we'll pick it right up and we know right where we're at. And we just,
I love that.
But it usually ends up being like, okay, we'll pick up in like first few minutes of Two Towers and we end up watching through Return of the King or something because, we got to put the next one on.
Well,
of course.
Yeah.
And
but
you can't just watch one.
I would love to show Lucy what marrying an Aragorn is like, or Aragon. I hate how those two names are so similar because that movie was
Aragorn.
awful. I know. I wanted to bring that up because we were talking about fantasy movies and some are terrible. This here is my prized possession. This book right here, because inside, this is how my husband proposed to me.
Oh, how nice.
Let's go on
awesome.
our
So sweet.
adventure. And in here was where the ring box was.
So how upset were you that he ruined a book for that?
Not at all.
Oh, good. I was like, I know you're such a diehard fan. You're like, what the?
Could have been a real
Because
struggle.
it was such a grand gesture because he knew exactly who I was and that Lord of the Rings is like my favorite thing ever and how much it meant to me. So Lucy, that's what it's like. And that's
We'll
how
make sure
you
she sees
know.
that.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So, all right, guys. Well, thank you so much for talking with me about Lord of the Rings. I love these movies. They mean a lot to me. I think that's a great way to end it, to talk about how they've impacted you, Erika, in your life in a personal way. For me and my kids, like I said, it is just something that we share together. They hold up so well, even 20 years later, and they're just classics. So thank you, guys. This has been awesome. Collin, let's find out if we've got a winner for the raffle.
Let's do it. Before we do that, though, we have reached 75% of our goal. During this panel, we've raised about $110 more.
Awesome.
Yeah, there we go.
Thank you. That is so great.
Guys so much for your donations. We really appreciate it. Jake, you'll like this. There was one donation from Blake Lisman that just says for Lucy, and so that's very sweet.
Yeah, I saw
No
that.
apologies for Rudy.
Yeah, you had a gif of Aragorn on there as he's getting ready to charge the Black Gate, and it said for Lucy.
Yes.
I was like, oh, that's amazing.
It's awesome.
It's very cool.
Thank you, Blake.
That's perfect.
So now I'm gonna cry. Excuse me. So Evermore tickets. Our winner is gonna be. Let me hit the random.
If
picker
it's me
here.
again, please find somebody else.
It's Marley.
Marley!
Hey, Marley.
Congratulations, Marley.
Congrats, Marley.
All right,
That's
guys.
awesome.
Well, thank you so much for being a part of this panel. You guys were all fantastic. And let's move on to our next panel here in just a minute, which is Collin's Star Wars panel, episode 2. Collin Strikes Back. You can also find our following panel, the Battle of the Geeks 2, and then our closing ceremonies. So do make sure, if you haven't donated yet, there's still time. There's still time to enter into our raffle. Just go to givebutter.com/Utah RemoteCon 2, and we'll see you guys soon.
Your dog's a star, Craig. I love
Well,
it.
she's acting up and wants to go out, but if I hold her, she'll delay. She's making noises. And she's got diabetes too, so please give as much as you can. It won't go to the dog, but it's still.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, guys.